Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. When it comes to my argument about black people and careers, it's quite simple. Black people have been sabotaged more than everyone else because of the eugenics system, which is a Eurocentric system. It's white, Jewish, and LGBT-centric. Asians are very closely related to white people, right? Europe and Asia. And Hispanic people are more closely related to white people than black people, as are Native Americans as a group, because a lot of them are mixed with white. And so therefore, in a system that's historically a eugenic system, look up social Darwinism, look up biodemography, biology and demographics, look up scientific racism and Eurocentrism and their history and the timeline. It's clear. No one can deny it. And that's sort of a system where there's a domino effect at play. The people who are the most stigmatized are going to do the worst at school. And when we look at the scores, it's blacks and Native Americans who do the worst, and black people face more discrimination than Native Americans. And so we see that at one point in American history, 45% of the prisons nationwide were black, even though black people were only 13% of the country. Black people were 13% of the country and owned less than 0.5% of the capital. That's what you would expect in a system that's designed for white people and by white people while they pretend it's for all people. People try to counter by saying that there are racial differences in intelligence. Immediately, they're wrong. They're wrong to think that those racial differences work in their favor. For example, for thousands of years, people have scrambled to create the top martial arts. It was black people that achieved that. And we see the evidence everywhere. We see it in boxing and MMA, and my top martial arts challenge makes it crystal clear. Part of why this racist system suppresses my videos. The IQ test does not represent intelligence. There are various forms of intelligence. Existential intelligence, while we're here, naturalist intelligence, spatial intelligence, interpersonal and intrapersonal, understanding yourself and others. There's bodily kinesthetic, there's artistic intelligence, there's linguistic intelligence, logical, mathematical. Okay, so we don't see that they're using a comprehensive approach to understanding intelligence. What they're doing is like a group of people who's the best at swimming, but they're not quite that, and this is a story for another day, saying that how fast you can swim determines how smart you are. Because it's well known and well documented that whites and Jews and Asian people have a written tradition. So when you're reading and writing, it favors people with a written tradition. When you're less stigmatized than other people and the society's made more for you, it favors you. Now keep in mind, not every Asian, does as well as every other Asian. There's different groups of Asians. Some have more of a written tradition than others, so on and so forth. But you get what I'm saying. So the IQ test shows how well people are doing in school based on the measure of the school system. How you learn, how they grade, and they don't take into account a lot of things. Nutrition, distractions, generational sabotage, what have you. So the argument is very simple. Because your system refuses to restructure the school system for those who need to learn differently, while keeping this traditional system for those who like it that way, and those it works for, because you refuse to structure your workplaces in a way that is fair for black people, in a way that's good for the economy. We see what we would expect to see. When you design the system this way, we'd expect to see this output almost to a T. They have no counter-argument for these arguments. We see people like Charlie Kirk and, Breitbart and whoever else, right? They say things and they're aligned to the people who say things like racial politics don't work. No. Racial politics, depending on how you define it, is the only solution, because you have to look at things in terms of race to understand it. That's like you're a veterinarian and you say, well, arguing that there's different species and they have different needs and diets doesn't work. No, that's the only way it does work. If you don't like a multicultural society, why don't you go somewhere where they're committed to a one-race society? They try to force everybody into a white way of doing things has crashed the economy. $37 trillion in debt. The top half of society, which is disproportionately white, Jew, Asian, LGBT, okay, they have $162 trillion in assets and liquid wealth, where the bottom half is only $2 trillion. And 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And 60,000 Americans die every year from a lack of adequate access to health care. And there's other problems as well. 800,000 homeless people, all the rapes, 1 in 5 Americans on psych meds. Your system does not work. And pretending the IQ test is the ultimate test of intelligence is sick and false and very disingenuous, to say the least. Only an idiot who doesn't understand life, doesn't understand basic sense at all, would choose to play stupid about these things and insist on a broken system. You failed the intelligence test, rather, where it matters most. Morality. Like Martin Luther King said, who was more educated than the vast majority of people, said you should judge people by the content of their character. Not their money, not the color of their skin, not what kind of college education they have, but the content of their character. When you fail to have the character to treat people fairly, your system is run by idiots who are suppressing people that are much more intelligent than they are. Thank you.